This is Jim from Trek World, and today we're going to take a trip back in time. The year would be 2005. While the literary world was buzzing about 5 people you would meet in heaven, the box office king that year was Star Wars Episode 3. And on television, Kiefer Sutherland's 24 was just what Americans wanted after the horrors of 9/11. Most strategically, broadcast television was going all in on high-definition television for the first time. And to be one of the first in line to contend for all of those new HD TV sets, Paramount decided to do something that would change the face of Star Trek forever. They announced that they were remastering the entire Star Trek original series into 16:9 using high-definition scans of the original 35mm film for the episodes, complete with new color balances, advanced image processing, and most importantly, they were replacing all of the old-fashioned optical effects used in the series back in the 1960s with the very latest state-of-the-art computer graphics imaging. It appeared that the original 1966 Star Trek television series was entering into the new millennium in style. Please be sure to check out these other popular Trek World videos when you're finished with this one. Also, if you hit that little like button on the screen right now, you will be helping YouTube to show this video to more people and give them a chance to discover these videos as well. So in 1972, I was 8 years old, and I began watching a TV show in the afternoon that I really liked. I liked a lot of shows that year: Scooby-Doo, Gilligan's Island, The Brady Bunch, The Partridge Family. A lot of kids did. My parents, though, never quite understood, my father in particular, the utter nonsense that I watched involving lasers, pointy-eared aliens, and salt vampires. Yet, here you and I are today, 50 years later. We talk about computer-generated effects. We debate the merit of one television series over another. And the older we are, well, let's just say we're old school. We don't like the remastered episodes because they don't feel right to us. So we go out and we buy DVDs and Blu-rays so that we can watch the episodes without all that fancy remastering. And the whole time we talk about how great it is to own those unenhanced episodes that we watched as we grew up. But what if I told you that you really weren't watching the versions that you watched growing up? That every DVD is actually a digitally enhanced version. Okay, in order for us to truly appreciate what Star Trek looked like when we discovered it back in the 60s and 70s, we have to go back and review it in the most realistic of ways. After Star Trek went off the air, the only way to watch it other than syndication was bootleg copies on VHS or Beta. But Paramount Home Video came to the rescue in early 1985. With the advent of Columbia House going into the VHS publishing business for their monthly subscription service, Paramount quickly licensed the tapes to Columbia House and sat back, leaving Columbia House to do the hard work, while Paramount just collected the checks. And then, in August of 1999, over a decade later, Paramount began releasing the series on DVD for the very first time. Digitally enhanced and remastered, these first DVDs used a new master that had been created by Paramount, taking a high-resolution photograph of each individual frame of film. And then they cleaned up that frame by reducing noise, color-correcting the frame, and then sharpening the result. Now, ironically, these new enhanced and remastered episodes were originally done almost 9 years earlier for a special Japan-only Laserdisc collection. The operation was especially commissioned for the 1992 to 1993 Japanese original series Laserdisc collection releases Star Trek Log 1, Log 2, and Log 3. When Paramount released the DVDs, they used that master instead of the true originals which had been used for the VHS releases. Now, if you were lucky enough to still have a VHS VCR and any of the original Star Trek episodes, go ahead, grab one, watch it. It is surprising how much it differs from the original footage that we are given today on the Blu-rays and DVDs, isn't it? So now that we have the technical stuff out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. The purpose of this video, and 3 other videos that will follow, is to review the original non-CGI shots of the 11-foot model in Star Trek and see what they look like. I'm going to break these videos down into the pilots that we're looking at today, Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3. We'll take a look at each shot as it was created for the very first time, and in what additional other episodes that shot may or may not have shown up in. And I will use the best non-CGI footage that I can find, which will probably be from those DVDs rather than VHS, so that we actually can see it at its best clarity on the screen as we review these. Now, right after Christmas in December of 1964, Richard Dayton delivered the 11-foot model of the Enterprise to the Howard Anderson Company for use in the TV series Star Trek. In this photo, we see Richard, Mel, and Vernon posing with a model just outside of the Anderson Effects Studio. Now, 2 models were actually produced for Star Trek, a 3-foot model and an 11-foot model, which Dayton quite often referred to as the ×4 model. Both were ready for immediate filming the day they were dropped off. They had both their starboard and port sides completely painted with letters, windows, numbers, and pennants. There were some physical details missing from the port side of the 11-foot model, most notably a small piece of wood on the secondary hull near the deflector dish. We have a fascinating video on how the port side of the Enterprise had been painted and detailed originally. Please be sure to check it out later for more information. When Richard delivered them to Howard Anderson that day, he believed both of them were ready to be used for filming, but they actually decided that they weren't going to really film with the 11-foot model, with the exception of one long opening scene. Then they would use the 3-foot model for everything else, since it was quite easier to film at the time. And here is that first appearance of the 11-foot model, and indeed its only appearance in the first pilot, The Cage. Clocking in at just under 13 seconds in length, it would be one of the more elaborate shots ever recorded for the Enterprise. The viewpoint moved at least 3 times in a single shot. First, the view moves to the left to make the model appear to have come in from the left. Then, it zooms in a little bit to make it look as if the model were rapidly approaching. And finally, it rises above the model at an angle to make it appear that the model tilted downward in our direction. Although the complete clip is shown in the intro to The Cage, it would never appear again in its entirety. Instead, the shot would be cut into its 3 basic distinct sections and formed the basis for the very first stock footage that was to be used in Star Trek. Now, the first part of the shot, which I will refer to as TC1, was only used 3 more times after The Cage. They basically took the first 6 seconds or so of the master clip, and they slowed it down by about 40%. It didn't stay around long. One of the reasons they dropped it was that the shot really highlighted the old wooden nacelles instead of the lighted ones that had been installed after the 2 pilots. Ironically, the very last time it was seen was in the 3rd season episode of Is There in Truth No Beauty? I've not really been able to identify why they dusted it off and used it after 2 years, but my experience is that everything they did on the show was driven by cost. Now, after season 2 had been filmed, the model was placed in storage, would there remain for several years. So they obviously identified a need for a shot and decided to go ahead and run the clip one more time. Now, TC2 is made literally from the middle piece of the original shot, as it actually doesn't go far enough to let us see the top of the bridge. Again, they didn't use it for long because of those unlit nacelles. The shot was only used 3 times in the first 6 episodes filmed. And finally, TC3 was first used in Season 1, where it would be used with the normal star field behind it. But beginning in Season 2, only the epileptic seizure-inducing version of the flashing clip was shown. First with By Any Other Name in Season 2, and then finally in Season 3 with Is There in Truth No Beauty? Now, as everybody knows, NBC turned down the original pilot, but as a first, they asked Desilu to make a second pilot. So word was given on June 11, 1965, that another pilot had been ordered. But this time, Gene wanted lights in the 11-foot model. In particular, he wanted running lights on the saucer and in the secondary hull. The addition of the lighting effects were actually pretty complex. The port side of the model was drilled into so that they could accommodate running the electrical cables through it. Light bulbs were installed in the secondary hull. the dorsal, the saucer, which illuminated windows that had been cut into the skin of the model, and blinking white anti-collision lights were also added to the saucer and secondary hull. After the changes were made, the Enterprise sat atop a new swiveling floor stand that would now allow them to film the model from a variety of angles. Unlike the first pilot, this time, dozens of photos and video clips were created of the 11-foot model for use in the second pilot. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out to you pertains to the various urban legends that surround the mystery of how they were able to show the port side of the model, in spite of the fact that beginning with this pilot, holes had been cut into the port side of the model in order to run wires needed for the light. Once those holes had been cut, it was never going to be practical again for them to film from the port side. However, it does appear that at least one photo was taken of the port side of the model during these sessions. As you can see here, the wooden nacelle caps and the oversized window at the very top of the saucer confirms it was filmed during the second pilot. And the lower left-hand window, you can actually see the model being shot from the left-hand side as well. You can also see, however, where they began to drill holes and wires through the port side. The picture quality is not all that great, but you can still see that the port side still had the numbers, letters, and pennants from when the model had been initially delivered. For now, I just want to point out that the left side of the screen shows how they were able to make it look like they were filming the port side, but they really weren't. We'll take a closer look at that in a few moments. They shot a total of 6 different shots in Where No Man Has Gone Before. Well, actually, they did 7, but there was an additional shot they made but didn't use until well after the series was underway. We'll take a look at that scene later when we review the episode that it debuted in. Now, the first shot we'll look at from the second pilot is what I call slow approach. It's pretty obvious from watching it how I got that name. This shot would be used at various speeds and in flipped directions in 9 more episodes in the first and second season. It would, however, ultimately be replaced by footage of the model after the nacelles had been lit up. The second clip was used in 41 episodes. As before, every time you'll see it, you see the solid wood nacelle caps instead of the lighted ones. This resulted in the Enterprise alternating between the wooden nacelles and the lighted ones in the same episodes. Now, the barrier shot of the Enterprise approaching the barrier was only used one more time, in the second season episode By Any Other Name. Now, much like the side view we looked at earlier, this clip, which I call Ride Into the Sunset, was actually used in all 3 seasons. And if you thought 41 episodes was impressive, this one appeared in 60. You can always spot it because the end of the nacelles have the vent lines in them. It is often shown composited over a different planet or different objects, and at other times, like many other clips, it is shown flipped. It is also the only clip featured in the opening credits of all 3 seasons. Now, this shot, which I called In Orbit, was only going to be used one more time, and that was in The Enemy Within. It would go on to be featured in the opening credits for seasons 2 and 3, which was a pretty odd choice considering the fact that 1, you can see the wooden nacelles beautifully here, and 2, the giant lighted window that Gene had placed at the front of the bridge section on the saucer is also very obvious. Now, this last shot I call Breaking Orbit. I actually remembered seeing this shot in the old syndicated packages, even though it was only used in the first 2 episodes of the first season. It was a very unique perspective to see the Enterprise coming at you from the planet. Now, you may remember that I told you there were actually 7 scenes shot, but only 6 were used. The 7th scene showed up in Dagger of the Mind later on in the TV series. It was only used the one time. Note, this is actually an example of them using the reversed letters on the model's right-hand side to make it look as if the left side were being filmed. Many people originally believed this shot was an urban legend created during the earliest conventions in the 1970s. Originally, it was believed they used a decal to do this, and you see them at the bottom of the screen here, but upon close examination of the actual model in the Smithsonian during one of its recent restorations, revealed that they actually covered the normal letters with paper that had been painted to match the nacelle, and then the reversed letters were put on top of that paper. This was done to make it easy for them to take the shot apart because they didn't have to remove anything. They just simply peel off the paper and go back to work. However, at the end of the day, it actually proved far more simple for them in the future to simply flip the shot and cut the ship just before the registry would appear. Now, the way you can tell this is definitely the left-handed side, even if you were not lucky enough to have the blue screen right in front of you, is you'll notice that the letters appear correct to us, and there is also that block of wood under the pennant. Remember, the starboard side had the block of wood. The port side did not. So whenever you see correct numbers and a block of wood, they had to be using the reversed lettering. So that's it for the two pilots. In the near future, we're going to be releasing 3 more videos to follow along in this one's footsteps. 1 for Season 1, 1 for Season 2, and I bet you know where I'm going with the third one. Yep, 1 for Season 3. We will look at every new piece of footage that was filmed for a specific Star Trek episode, and after it was filmed, we'll look at where it showed up besides the episode it was filmed for. And once again, we are coming to yet the end of another video for Trek World. Please be sure to check out these other videos on our channel that you may be interested in, and be sure to hit the like button on this video so it can be recommended to others. Until next time, live long and prosper.